You are listening to Be the Exception podcast, episode 195. Today, we have a special interview with Malia Hollowell from Plato to Plato, and she is here to talk with us about 4 simple steps to help all learners, including ours, reach their learning goals by the end of the school year. Malia works hard to provide training tools and support in the science of reading formula to help teachers feel more effective in assessing, getting groups together, having end of the year goals that you can then work backwards from. And it really is eye-opening to see her and her vision of helping teachers be more effective in this area of reading so that our learners become thriving readers with her systems that she has set up in place. So let's go ahead and jump on into today's episode of Be the Exception podcast.
Welcome to Be the Exception podcast. As teachers, each one of us has something that comes naturally to us that others would love to know more about. Throughout this podcast, we'll chat with amazing professionals and offer easily digestible tips that you can quickly implement in your classroom or business, helping you stand out with things you do really well. Your host, Dawn Ellis, is a qualified educational specialist with 10 years of special education experience, published journal articles, and was a state finalist for Elementary Teacher of the Year. Dawn provides tools for special education teachers to perform at their very best, helping deal with the frustrating daily obstacles of being an educator. She offers a roadmap of resources and strategies to make you a confident leader in your school and community. So if you're ready to start the conversation, learn from others, and grow together, you're in the right place. Now here's your host, Dawn Ellis.
Welcome back to another episode of Be the Exception podcast. My name is Dawn Ellis. I'm an educator of 15 years. I'm a national board certified teacher. And today we're thrilled to welcome back Malia Hollowell, a powerhouse in the realm of reading and education, and also a fellow national board certified teacher. While I have my certification in exceptional needs, and we chat about all things special education in our episodes here at Be the Exception podcast, Malia has her certification in reading, and she's really diving into empowering teachers to use brain-friendly tools and share her experience of over 20 years in the classroom. She is here to share her insights and strategies to help guide our learners towards reading success. So sit back, grab a notepad, and get ready to redefine the way that you approach reading this semester. And as special educators who love having professional development, especially when it's free, make sure and check out Malia's free webinar live training talking all about 5 teaching secrets that unlock students' reading, and to discover how to have your students become thriving readers without spending hours and hours of the day prepping and planning. So make sure and check out the live training coming up this Sunday. All the information will be in the show notes, also on all social media platforms. So make sure and check that out. Hey everyone, today I have Malia Hollowell here to chat with us all things reading. And I really think you're going to have an amazing time listening to this episode because she's such a powerhouse in this area. We've had her on the show before, but I'm excited to have her back to provide even more insight in how to make sure that we are reaching our reading goals with our learners. So help me welcome Malia. Hey lady, how are you?
I am great. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad you're here. For any of our listeners who may not be familiar with you, tell us a little bit about your background as an educator and what you're doing today.
I started teaching back in 2003, and I was ready to hit the ground running. I was going to be a superstar teacher who just accomplished all the things on day one. And I walked into my second grade classroom on the first day of school and suddenly realized that half of my students didn't know how to read. And I had no idea how to help them because I had had one reading class in my elementary ed program. And it basically could be summed up in one sentence, which is put good books in kids' hands and they will connect the dots and figure out the rest. So I had no tools, I had no strategies, I had no idea how to actually help them move their reading forward. So I have spent the last 20 years researching and testing and tweaking to find the tools and strategies that actually work and help students become thriving readers. And at the same time, it's really important that we can cut away all of those things that don't work, that are wasting our time and are wasting our students' learning time as well. So that is my journey over the last 20 years. I wrote a book called The Science of Reading in Action that came out this year or last year. And I had so much fun putting that together to empower other teachers with these brain-friendly tools and strategies. And I'm excited to chat with you today and share some goodies as well.
Yes, I love that. And I know we talked about the book back, I think in March, right? Is that right? Of 23. And I know I actually still have it on my shelf at school, and I've had other teachers read it. Like, it is so beneficial, no matter if you're a general ed teacher, special ed teacher, even a self-contained teacher. The strategies in there are practical. There are diagrams, there are visuals to help you get through the processes so that you can teach those phonemic awareness and those syllables and that proficiency in reading even easier. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure I'll link it in the show notes. But having you back on the show today, I think not only was that such a great episode, kind of breaking down tips and tricks to become more fluent in reading, but I would love to kind of pick your brain today and just chat about some ways and some simple steps to help all of our students, especially in this next semester, reach their IEP goals or reach their reading goals and find that success. Because we as teachers want to see them be successful, but the kids want and need to feel that success. So how can we provide that kind of roadmap to get them there? Can you help break that down for us today?
Yes. I think you hit the nail on the head, or I know you hit the nail on the head, because our ultimate goal is to help students be successful and feel successful. But it can be daunting because if you have a caseload of 50 students, or you have a class that you're trying to support and they have 20 students, it can feel like you have to make 20 different individual lesson plans and pull together 20 different activities. And it can feel really daunting. You don't have 20,000 hours in a day to lesson plan and prep. So it's really important that you have a rinse and repeat system that's going to help you take students, every single student, from where they are right now to where you need them to be by the end of the year. And one of the things that we talk about in my teaching membership called the Science of Reading Formula is a 4-step system we call ACED, ACED. So each of those letters means something. And the very first step is A for assessment. We have to pinpoint where students are in their learning journey. And I like to think of it like walking up a flight of stairs. You're going to have some students who are on step number 1. You're going to have other students who are 3 steps ahead of them. And then you'll have students who are 10 steps beyond that. So it would make no sense for us to ask the student who's at the top of that flight of stairs to be practicing activities or listening to lessons at the bottom of the stairs. They're going to be bored to tears, and they're going to be, there are going to be behavior issues. They're going to be distracted and disengaged. Similarly, if we have a student who's at the very bottom of the staircase, it is going to be way too overwhelming and way too stressful for them to be asked to do activities that are this far, so far up along the continuum that they just couldn't possibly succeed. So we need to meet every single student where they're at. And the way that we're going to be able to do that is by assessing their skills. So A is for assessment. We need to pinpoint what phonics skills students already have learned and what phonological awareness skills they have already learned so that we can figure out what to teach them next. Step number 2 in our process is that C, and C is for creating groups. So if you are working with a small group of students, or you are working with, a number of students, you're going to notice that there are patterns in those assessments. So for example, you might have a group of students who needs to practice their vowel sounds, and you'll have another group of students who is ready to work on more complex skills like digraphs. Di means two, graphs means letters. So 2 letters that make one sound, like the TH or the SH or the CH. So that's great for us because it means instead of us having to meet each child at their individual level and come up with individual lesson plans and individual activities, we can sort these students into groups of kiddos who are working on similar skills. And I like to think of it like sorting Skittles. If I gave you a bag of Skittles and you were going to sort them by color, you would have a pile of reds, you'd have a pile of greens and a pile of yellows. Well, that's what we want to do with our assessments. We want to make one pile of students who are working on their letter sounds and one pile of students who are practicing their digraphs. And that means that instead of us having to create those personalized lessons, we can teach just 5 lessons or come up with 5 centers because those are the only skills that we need to work on. So that's step 2. C is for create groups. E is going to be our next step. That's step number 3. And E is for our end of year goal. We want to look at our groups and we want to come up with an end of year goal that is a good fit for each of those groups. So those kiddos who are practicing letter sounds are going to have an end of year goal that will be different than the kids who are further up the staircase and are ready to practice more complicated skills, right? Because we want to stretch them to a different spot. So we need to give every single group a just right end of year goal that is going to push them, but not overwhelm them. And then step number 4 is D, and that is for design. I'm kind of cheating here because it's actually backwards designing. So what we're going to do is we need to look at where we're starting today, look at where we're going with that end of year goal, and then we want to work backwards and figure out what skills we need to teach students from the end of year goal all the way back to where we're starting. And I know it can sound kind of silly and weird to work backwards. A lot of times when we think about goal setting, we think about starting where we are here and going forward. But when you work backwards instead and really start with that end of year goal, it's incredibly shocking. It's amazing how much easier it can feel because you realize, okay, if I want to go here, if this is my final goal, well, what do I need to accomplish right before that goal? Oh, I need to teach them this skill. Okay. And then what do I need to accomplish right before that? Oh, I need to teach them this other skill. So by working backwards, we're actually able to pretty easily figure out all of the steps we need to take along the way. And we create this easy to follow roadmap for ourselves, this step-by-step recipe that we can follow that makes it possible to confidently go from here to there.
I love that. And I love how you broke it down into those manageable steps of just making sure we have kind of that assessment to baseline to see where they are, right? And having those goals of what we need. And a lot of times as special ed teachers, we already have that goal kind of in place, but we want to make sure that it aligns to what the data is saying at this time. And then making sure that we have the groups, forgot that part, having the groups based on the needs. So sometimes we do have to work with kids individually, but let's work smarter, not harder, putting those kids that have similar needs together to work and target those areas, and then kind of backwards designing. Now, I did have a question. What are some of your favorite assessments to kind of baseline and see where they are? Do you have some that you love? Or is it just kind of making sure you're using an assessment that's within your school?
Great question. So 2 pieces of this. It's important to find out what assessments you are mandated to complete with your students. Okay. So obviously I want to give that disclaimer because it's going to be different for every teacher. Dibbles, for example, where I live is mandated. So we would want to
Okay.
make sure that our teachers are completing that.
Yeah.
We
have
have
iReady.
two, yes, yeah, iReady is another great one. It's pretty popular. So we have two assessments inside the Science of Reading Formula membership that we ask our members to complete. And I'm going to mention them here because it's important that you're checking off both of these buckets of skills. So whether you're using iReady or Dibbles or something else, you want to make sure that you are checking for these two different buckets of skills because they are indicators of where students are in the process, and they're going to make it so much easier for you to pinpoint what skills you need to teach next. So the first bucket of skills we want to assess are students' phonological awareness skills. We really want to make sure that we know if they are able to hear the sounds in words and move those sounds around. And the most important skill of those phonological awareness skills is phonemic awareness. We want to know if students can hear the individual sounds in words. So a phoneme is an individual sound, like cat has three, at. If we're checking a student's phonemic awareness, we want to make sure that they can hear all three of those sounds. And then we want to know, okay, they can hear them, but can they move those sounds around? So can we change the a in cat to an I to make the new word kit? Can we change the k in kit to and make a new word hit? So there are a lot of different ways that we can assess phonemic awareness, and we need to make sure that we're checking all of those different skills and sub-skills so we can make sure that students have a rock solid foundation. So phonological and phonemic awareness is really the foundation of students' reading. It's like building a house. You want to make sure you have that rock solid foundation without any holes and cracks. And then the second thing we need to assess are the walls and the roof of our house, our reading house.
Okay.
And the walls and the roof, if, really good, solid set of skills to assess are phonics skills. Because just like we were talking about a couple minutes ago, we want to make sure that we know, have students learned their letter sounds? Do they know all of their vowel sounds? Do they know digraphs like SH, TH, CH? Do they know blends, which are even more advanced for students? So we need to know exactly what phonics skills they know so that when we give them a story to read, we can confidently say, yes, they are going to be able to sound out every single letter on that page, or you know what, this is going to be too advanced for them. I'm going to give them something else. I'm going to pull some other passage for them to read so that we can make sure that they have learned all of the skills they'll have to use in order to read this page.
That's so good. I think even listening to you today and having not only being a teacher 15 years and honestly having to relearn kind of that science of reading foundation of like truly focusing in on those phonemic awareness skills and those phonics skills and how it impacts the rest of everything else, not just fluency and how fast can they do it. But also being a mom and having a first grader this year and truly seeing it in action and see how like it all just builds on top of each other. And if we don't have just one brick of the house, how it makes an impact. And if you don't circle back around and make sure that we find some confidence in that area, how it makes it just kind of shifts everything else. So I love those two buckets and kind of breaking it down into that house analogy of having that strong foundation of those individual sounds and how we can, like, because I know we have a lot of nonsense words, like we have different packs of words that we read at night, but then also like sentences that I thought were way too hard for a first grader, but like we're breezing through it as long as we're working on those sounds to begin with. So I mean, I feel like I'm living it in real life, what you're saying. And I feel like these steps are so beneficial for special ed teachers to hear, especially with those learners that you just feel like you've not had lots of progress for months or maybe even years, and how we can kind of pivot our mindset with these reading steps to find success for the remainder of this year. So thank you for sharing those. And I know as teachers, we're always trying to learn new steps, and you have a webinar coming up real soon here from the airing date. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it could even be more beneficial to them as teachers of whatever disciplinary that they teach or discipline?
Absolutely. Yes. I know when you hear steps like the steps I just walked through, it can be really exciting. You think, oh my gosh, I'm ready. I'm going to jump right in and I'm going to assess and I'm going to create the groups and then I'm going to give every group a goal and then design a plan. But the reality is that there are a lot of little pieces along the way that you might want support with. So what we did is we pulled together a free teacher training called 5 Secrets that Unlock Students' Reading. And it's an hour-long training with me. We're going to be doing it on January 14th. It's live at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And you can hop on in your pajamas, grab something cozy to drink, and we are going to geek out together on 5 of my favorite, most powerful, game-changing tweaks that you can make in your classroom on the very next day that will help students get that big, exciting reading growth without you having to work harder and really struggle to pull together all of the pieces on your own. And spoiler alert, at the very end of the webinar, we're opening up our membership, the Science of Reading Formula, and we only do this twice a year. So I always get really excited. It feels like a party because we get to welcome in new members and you'll get a chance to join us there as well.
That's so awesome. And I love how the webinar will give you some more nuggets, actionable steps. But if you're feeling like this is really an area I need to target and address, and it's just an area that I don't feel like I have a lot of resources in, I feel like the membership also gives step by step everything that you need to find success. But what I love that you guys have done too is you've made it to where that membership that you can learn more about with the webinar, you also have access to like letters for your admin to where you're not necessarily coming out of pocket, right? To where you can become better as an educator, but also call it professional development all year long. Like get your whole squad of teachers that you teach with to come be a part. What do you think?
100%. That's one of the things that I get most excited about. I, like you, believe that teachers should not have to pay out of pocket for any of this. It really is just good teaching and it benefits students. So we want to empower you with the tools, training, and support that you need to be successful. And we're going to help you do that by giving you a copy and paste letter that you can just email to your principal, and you would be amazed by how many principals say yes every single year because they know it's good for students. When you are empowered and you are confident and you are successful, students win. So that is a definite easy yes for a lot of principals.
Absolutely. Well, we'll make sure and link all of the webinar and the membership info in the show notes, because I feel like what we've talked about here today has definitely been some stepping stones to find success for that roadmap. And so many times we're getting into that, season of, are we going to master these IEP goals? What do we need to do? Do we need to pivot? And so now in January is a great time to kind of look at that, assess that, and hone in on sharpening those skills to help become the best reading teacher, even though we're not just a reading teacher, we're not just a math teacher, but hone in on those skills so that when we are working on it, we're doing it to the best of our ability so the kids have the most progress as possible between now and the end of the year. So, Malia, thank you so much for kind of talking through it, all of these steps today, and empowering our listeners to feel like they can confidently teach reading between now and the end of the school year and see progress within their learners. I really appreciate your insight. Will you tell us again where everyone can find you on social media and for these webinars, and we'll list it again in the show notes.
Yes. Well, of course, I would love to see you at the webinar. I geek out on reading and I just love getting to share my favorite tips and tricks with all of you. In addition, you can always find me on Instagram. I'm at Play-Doh, #2, Play-Doh 2, Play-Doh. And you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, all the places.
Yes. Awesome. Well, we will link all of that. And I would love to encourage you and invite you myself to the webinar on January 14th to learn even more steps to improve those reading target areas. So again, thank you, Malia, so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you for having me.